The three features we'll be talking about today is the single process experience, the AI process content creation, and then Gluu for HR. And Sam has also joined us today in our little regular webinar team. And will be talking to us about the two latter features, which are not yet available on the platform, but will be shortly. They'll be released as beta features, so you can test them out. The single process experience, on the other hand, is already on the platform, available for you. Let me just quickly take you through that one. And let me just see if I can share my screen with you. Here we go. So you might have noticed that when you want to create a new process and you hit the little blue button in the top left corner of your Gluu screen, you have two options now. One is called beta. So instead of creating the process here on this side and adding it to a category and a group like you're used to, you now have the option of using our new feature. So we give our process a name. Let's just call it new process for the sake of it, and the outcome is something good. And when we hit next, you see how on the left-hand side we got the process name. And here's where it really starts differing from the experience you're used to, because now we have the option of adding roles. So for this process, I'm going to need an accountant and an auditor and the CFO. And when I click next, what we do now is that we actually start mapping the process for you. So we're much more helpful in this new version of process creation than we used to be. And you can actually also add your activities already at this stage if you know them, instead of drag and drop as you're used to. So if I put activity 1 here, sorry, I couldn't spell that right. I place it in the accountant role, and I say, oh, that's good, and I want to add another activity, and we'll call that activity 2, and we'll put that in the auditor role. And I click done. Then the activities appear right here on your diagram for you, so you don't have to create them. As you can see, you also have a little table of content where they have been added. And if you scroll down, you'll actually see them now below your process diagram where they are editable. So you don't have to, you can type text right here, and you don't even have to click the box and click the little I or go to the activity. You can just do it right here. So that's really cool. If you haven't played around with that yet, go ahead and do so. And this option in terms of editing is also available if you have existing processes. You can edit them in this mode as well. So like I said, that feature is already there, ready for you to use. And it's in beta because we'll keep developing it, adding more things to it. Eventually, you'll also have tasks and other things in this single page view. But for now, it's really cool, and we're trying to help you as much as we can in creating your processes.
If I may add, it's also about sometimes these types of experiences are a single page experience makes it a lot easier for many people to relate, to understand what's happening rather than having to navigate to different places. So we also see this as working well in workshops, for instance, where you need a very fixed structure for creating a number of processes. So it's a good way of getting a head start with a number of processes, and then maybe delegating to individual mappers who then work with each process in the normal way.
Yeah. Like I said, we're trying to help you as much as we can, making life easier when you create processes and edit them. That actually takes us to the the next point on our agenda. We have, if I can get it to change. That was a bit too much. There we go. If we look at the AI, we talked about that in the roadmap webinar as something we're working on, creating a Gluu assistant for you. And the Gluu assistant will actually also be able to help you when creating processes in the future, which is also rather exciting, I think. Sun, maybe you can share a little bit with us about how the Gluu AI assistant that we're going to release very soon, what it looks like and what it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be happy to do that. So basically, you'll have this little button in the corner. We will find a proper icon for it, but this will be available on any page. And for every page, it's going to have unique things it can do. So in this case, imagine we created a new Gluu account, and now we are in there to really to populate it. We don't have any processes yet. So basically, we have an ability now to suggest some new categories, for instance. That's what we wanted to do on this page. So we'll ask the bot just with a single click. Yeah, you can just move it a bit. With a single click, we will ask it to suggest some new categories. And then it will suggest categories based on the type of company we are. So if we are a certain size in a certain country, certain industry of categories, and you deselect the ones you don't want and you create them, and it will automatically create this in Gluu. And then, Lisa, maybe you should mute because.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course.
Your keyboard.
Sorry.
So then,
messaging.
Then you will continue until suggesting maybe to populate a certain category with certain groups. So then you get a selection of groups that you can do that you can choose from, and you put them in. And a lot of this information is coming from valid sources such as APQC, so it's pretty high quality content. And then you may be creating the selection where we have an existing account. So what we may want to do here is we want to see, are there any categories missing? And in this case, the tool will actually look at what you already have and compare it to what you should be having and suggest some kind of delta between what you would normally see for your type of company. So in this case, it's a lot smarter than what you would normally be able to do yourself via conventional, or not conventional, but other AI tools. So in this case, we have some suggestions for some categories. And again, we may deselect certain ones, and we will then create a number of categories, adding them to our process hierarchy automatically. So we don't have to do all that typing. And when this is done, we, of course, will, again, maybe start creating process categories. So as you can see, it's very sequential. It takes you from step to step. So in this case, we are suggesting now some groups in one of our categories. So we're selecting our category, because every time, of course, you have a certain area you're working on, and some has more priority than others. So in this case, we're suggesting some groups, and deselecting the ones we don't like. And then we will be creating the specific groups. So very easy interaction, just clicking a button, just deselecting things, and that's kind of it. Yeah.
And I think this is really great, Son, for especially for new customers in smaller organizations maybe that are not very process mature. If you want to start working with processes, but you don't really know where to start and how to build a process hierarchy, or maybe even what is a process hierarchy, then this is a really easy way to get started, and to get started right by getting these suggestions from your Gluu assistant. So that you have someone helping you out a little bit without having to book sessions with us to get that help, or read tons of articles or whatever.
Exactly, and of course we could be doing the same with the account roles. So in our organization, we have already created these roles. Which additional ones would you suggest? Want to share another one as well, which is going to be quite interesting also to release soon, and that is suggesting components. Because imagine that you have been creating a process and you have been creating a lot of work instructions, a lot of SOPs. And of course, the challenge now is that your company may have a lot of components that you want to use. So with components, I mean these little building blocks that you can use for your work instructions. So it could be your different tools. And what this will do then is it will basically highlight wherever there is a match with your own accounts component library. So if I've written a long description about how to do certain things, then the tool will analyze and see which links have I used, which system references, which asset references that somehow match certain components, and it will highlight it, and it will then allow me to very easily replace this with these components. So that's I think that's a pretty cool feature, because what this really does is it allows us to it allows you to, on one hand, really use the assistant to enrich your information with the company information. So it's making all those difficult relationships between the SOPs that business users are creating and the assets that you have in your organization, and hereby marking up everything so that the proper references to intranet sites, to systems, to assets, they are made inside the work instructions. So that's pretty cool, and I think this is key to what we want to achieve. We always want to utilize AI to look into your existing data and find ways to enrich it. So another case could also be suggesting processes that require optimizations, processes that are too long, processes that may not meet certain conventions of good practice. So of course, this will allow us to do a lot of things that will help also both small organizations, but also process excellence teams, where they really need to get an overview over hundreds of processes. Yeah.
And I think our whole idea behind the Gluu assistant and what it should be able to do was really to create say a Gluu, a digitalized version of your personal assistant. So of course you would have to prompt it and ask it to do a certain thing, just like you would a human personal assistant. You need to instruct it, but if you do that, then you get a really good input.
Yeah.
And it can save you a fair amount of work also, and that's, I think, especially the component suggestions is a very clear example of that for those of our customers that are already using components quite a lot. They'll see a huge benefit here, because your employees that are working with processes, they don't need to know what components are there, because the little assistant will just tell them.
Yeah, and I think.
Are you actually aware that?
No, please.
No,
yeah, what it will do is it will allow us to upload a number of big shared global libraries like common data models, APQCs, process frameworks, open source libraries, and then we can train the assistant to look into those. So we will solve the problem of getting this. Often everybody has probably experienced how AI can hallucinate a bit and just make up things. And of course, you don't want to have that inside your process framework. So by making sure you're mostly accessing high value information, you are pretty sure that the results are going to be valid. And that's something we can do on behalf of our customers. Yeah.
Very, very true. And I think for excuse me, and I think also for when we're talking about AI and components and all of that, that also ties in quite well with the HR feature that is coming out really soon. We're currently just testing with one of our customers, and if we move on to talking about Gluu for HR, Søren, what is it we've been trying to do here?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought it was a rhetorical question. Yeah. what we've been trying, of course, what we've been trying to do is not to create a new HR system, right? So we are just to recap what this whole thing is. It's about saying that competencies is like a building block of successful process work, because it's like the lower level of a role, and a role is part of a process. So let's imagine scenarios like if you want to authorize certain people for doing certain tasks in your warehouse, like driving a forklift truck, well, then they need a forklift certificate. So this will allow us to really authorize people to work with certain cases, certain processes, and really tie things together. Because of course, one thing is the role, another thing is the work instruction and the flow, but another thing is the competencies of that individual doing it. And they also need to meet certain standards. And that is what we are now bringing into Gluu. And then in addition to this, I guess we realized that some of our smaller customers, they don't have any big HR management systems. Some of our big customers may do, but the smaller ones, they are doing this in spreadsheets. And if they could also add a few fields and everything in here, they could turn Gluu into an HR system. And that is the ability that we now have. So let's have a look at it. I'm just gonna share it a little bit. So basically, what you see here is, imagine that we now have a competency section. This may actually live inside the roles or something. We may not make it as its own area, but this would be something where an HR person with an HR user profile has access. So they are creating competencies, and competencies are of two types. Some of them are like more like a skill, a rating, a skill where you have a certain rating. And this one, what we're looking at here now, is actually a forklift truck driver certificate. So we can put in a logo, and we can put in a certain a logo for it. But what we can also do is, I just have to jump back a little bit now. This was a little bit fast. So basically, we also have an ability to put in skills, and the skills allow us to really set a certain level of something. I'm seeing some disturbance on my end.
Yeah, for us, it's just still running some. So now I just stopped it. Where would you like it to go?
No, I'm just going to try to redo. There's some kind of black screen on my side. Let me just see. Our webinar system is not running that well today, I guess.
No, I think it also feels like It feels the fact that it's Friday, it's about ready for weekend.
I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to show the competency. Can you run it on your side, Louisa, maybe?
Yeah, it looks fine for me. What we're seeing
I
now
just have a
is
black screen, so I don't see anything.
okay. What we're let me just try and do it instead.
Yeah, but anyway, so I can talk a little bit about it before we get into it. So basically, this is now in test with some customers that are going to be using it as an HR system. And what the ambition of this is both to manage their competencies, so they can find out who has certain competencies for projects and for different types of work. But of course also, yeah, so we're back. That's great. So this was the certificate that you could add and edit all your certificates. The second part were the skills. So in a skill, you're actually doing a rating. So a rating on a scale from 1 to 5 using a global standard. So basically, these are then, you create your library of both certificates and skills, and then you can then assign them to roles. So in this case, we have our roles, and as you can see here now, we can sort by, we can look at some roles that have competencies in this case. So you see the warehouse manager has forklift truck driver, and we can see who has it. And if we take a look at this person here now, then we have a whole user profile page, a little bit inspired by LinkedIn, but you can see the different roles that the person has in certain processes, the supervisors, the managers. So we are making all these relationships that will allow us to do a lot more advanced things down the road. Also asking AI to do certain things for us. And if we go a little bit further, as you can see, we have then the competencies there. So this guy, he has certain competencies. We can see which cases that he's part of. And if I should mention that briefly, what that means is we have put in a new feature on the cases, which we call a flow ID. A flow ID can be some item making its way through our process. So in this case, of course, the person is making its way through the onboarding process. It could also be a production, an order number, or some other flow ID, depending on the process. But what this allows us to do is to group a lot of related cases. So in this case, as soon as we're using Lasse's flow ID, his name as a flow ID, then we can show all the different cases involving him in a confidential way. So it means his onboarding, his development, and so on. And this turns it very much into an HR dashboard. So you can see here his competencies, as we talked about. What you can also do is you can change them when you have a development interview. Of course, observing proper rights. So imagine having a competency development process where you fill in certain forms and you reconcile them with your manager, and then you set the new competency level based on the conversation you had. Also, your certificates are here because the certificates are more like driver's license and things that will expire. And then one more thing to mention here is this is what can turn it into a real HR system for certain customers. But because needs are different and you will have certain data in certain systems, then you have the ability to create what we call custom fields. So in this case, the numbers you see, the fields you see on the left-hand side are actually done for a Danish customer. That's why they are in Danish. But we can set up your own custom fields on your account because maybe you only want to capture some data in here and other data elsewhere. If you are a process excellence team in a large organization, I'm not sure you necessarily want all the employee data here, but maybe you want something related to processes. If you're a small company, maybe you want to use it as an HR system, right?
And so depending on the different legislative requirements that you have in the industry that you're in, or different certifications that you have, this can also be very helpful, because they have requirements on how to map what competencies are needed, and to show that you actually have those competencies available for different tasks, of course the critical ones. And this is a very easy way of doing that, and of getting that overview, and also showing it to auditors or whoever needs to see it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Louise. And I should mention to everybody who doesn't know, Louise is a former quality manager. She knows all about these requirements. But of course, that is also one of those areas that we are now fully covering, so that you would not need other systems for doing that. There is a good question from one of the listeners here. If the flow ID can be used to show the complete end-to-end process flows. And while the reporting may not be there fully yet, the answer is yes. What this really does is it allows you to make a different grouping of processes. So of course, we have construction companies as clients, and some of their processes have become quite complex and large, and instead what they can now do is they can just have a collection of processes, smaller processes, where the flow ID being the building project, the construction project, the number of that or the name of the project will be the flow ID combining these things. So it gives a lot more flexibility, and it allows us to make much simpler experiences when you're looking at the processes. So good question. Thanks for that.
And I think, Son, we're later on in the year, we'll be looking at cases a little bit more. We did do some improvements in that area already this year, actually, but that's definitely the direction that we're going in, so that you get that ability to connect multiple processes around the same case ID or flow ID. And connect tasks that way, instead of having to do templates per process.
Yeah, exactly. And another good question here. Or a confirmation from Jen here. Yes, that's correct. You will be able to pull out data from Gluu through the API using the flow ID, and which can be really helpful in cases where you have lots of processes involving the same thing. Could be an advanced manufacturing process where you have a certain order number, could be a new employee, like the example we show, or a construction project, or whatever your business is. Great point. So moving along a little bit, now we went into the users page, and I want to show a little bit how you can then use Gluu as a sort of a database for different types of competency information. So in this case, we have all our users, and what we are doing now, we created a filter to show whoever has forklift driver certificates. And as you can see right now, it's summarizing when they expire. So basically, we could set up different rules for making sure we are alerted when a certain number of certificates expire. And I know, well, probably you know that better than I do, Louise, but that is a big hassle for a lot of people out there which are using spreadsheets to do this. And it's a very manual, time-consuming effort, right?
Yeah, and this is, this is something that's just really difficult to handle if you cannot digitalize it some way, because then you have, the copy of the forklift certificate in the personnel file, the physical file that's usually printed and stored somewhere, and not very searchable. It's very difficult to see when that certificate actually expires, and then you have to keep track of that somewhere else, maybe in an Excel spreadsheet that you have to follow up on, and then you just see how the hassle is just building and building and building, and this is this is really what we're trying to do at Gluu. It's at the core of the product, trying to make work easier. for
Exactly.
you guys, and to help you digitalize some of the things that you have been unable to do so far in a simple way.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. And I think also now this is just showing the same with, that kind of hit it. I'm just going to go back to the old view. So with competencies, so imagine we have clients that are doing advanced manufacturing assembly lines, specialized in manufacturing assembly lines for customers all over the world. And of course, that requires a lot of technical skill. So sometimes they would need to know, who do we have in the organization with a certain skill, and that you can then create a filter for. So it's a nice way of really bringing your people into the equation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives you a really good overview. I mean, something that about competencies, the competencies you have in your organization, and something we've been talking about developing this feature further would be to be able to connect that to processes, saying, when executing this process, I would need this and this and this competence, and show me the people I have with that competence, because that would also allow you to have that overview of, do I have processes that I am actually unable to execute because I don't have the right competencies represented in employees there, or do we
Yeah.
need to do training or education or whatever for our employees?
Yeah, exactly. And one more thing to mention here is that often if you're the type of organization that you occasionally need to send a CV to as part of some kind of bid for a large assignment or something, well, then this page, of course, you will be able to turn that into a CV where you very quickly can do a PDF CV with the selected data, so that you don't have to maintain this information in a separate place, but you will even be able to know maybe which projects has this person been part of, maybe, and which competencies does the person have. So that's another way of doing it. So yeah, so that's competency development, and this is now being tested, as we talked about, by a number of real customers, and we are expecting to release it very soon. We just need to make sure we don't have too many issues in them, of course, before we release them. Yeah.
And as always, once they are released, we will of course inform you that they're there, available for you to try out, and you're always welcome to contact us if you want to explore further how you can use the new features in your specific setting. We're happy to give you some input on that, and demo some of the features further if need be.
Yeah. So I guess what's left is just to do a quick recap of our development roadmap for the first half of 2024. And as you can see now, Louisa showed you the single process experience. This will be further enhanced, further developed, enriched with full AI capabilities. So when you're in a workshop with internally or with clients, you can very quickly get a lot of processes done, so people can work on from there. We talked about the HR features, the competency management, and now also about the AI process content creation. And I think what is interesting, what we found out as a bit of an innovation inside our house here, is that turning it into a little bit of an assistant that floats on top will allow us to create a tool for making smart prompts for any page in any area of Gluu. So we expect to have a pretty rapid acceleration of this, where a lot of the knowledge that people like Louise and we will build it into the tool, so thereby helping you to ask the right questions just by clicking a button. So you always know, in this collection of processes, which one should I be looking at? Which one should I be updating? Which ones are the process owners not really doing their job? The activity level is too low, whatever it is. All compared with best practice, really. That's the ability we will have for this. So it will also help us with reporting. So you could ask the AI assistant for information that fits certain criteria, so the possibilities are really endless. The remainder of the year, we still, well, at least the remainder of the summer, we had some 4 releases here, and I would say that notifications with Raki will be going ahead. And actually, this is another example where we plan to do a lot of the notifications from AI-driven notifications, because this means we can make them a lot smarter. We have had the challenge of having a lot of information, and either we give people nothing or we bombard them with stuff, but the AI assistant will help us to do this in a much smarter way. But then coming to component experience, case manager, and KPIs and analysis, this is where you probably can expect that we will shift things around a little bit, given the opportunities we see in AI. And also, we have a little bit of follow-up with certain things where some of the earlier features, we want to make them 100% complete before we move on to something else. So the last 3 here, don't look too much at them and tell us if you really are expecting something. Otherwise, the timeline is a little bit uncertain with those. Component experience, that will include the ability to match components with work instructions, for instance. But yeah. So so that's a little bit about an update of the whole roadmap and everything. So you have anything else, Louise?
I don't think I have anything to add to AI and HR, other than we're just really excited about these features, because they have the potential to have a huge impact for our customers. And that's of course always what we strive for, but sometimes, when we're working with new features, you just get this feeling of, oh wow, this is really gonna be able to help our customers move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially this area, business process management, there's always so much tedious information maintenance, information input work, and this is really where I think we now have a great opportunity to use AI to service the process excellence teams out there to make this a lot easier, because of course it's always a lot easier if you are starting off creating potentially hundreds of new processes. If you can just call a standard, get a suggestion, modify that suggestion without having to go outside of Gluu, that's going to be a huge productivity enhancer for you. If you can also, instead of having to sit in a spreadsheet with 200 processes trying to compare if you're missing something, just ask AI. I think there are so many tasks that really, where AI is very well suited, much more than what you may find in other fields, where you have that risk of getting very poor responses. Because in this area, there are so many good frameworks we can ask, like APQC and others, where we can really suggest, for instance, components that you should include. If you are on a Microsoft technology stack, why don't we just give you a list of all the Microsoft tools and so forth?
And it's something that we're very mindful of, Son, commenting on what you said about AI being productivity enhancing, because we're all in uncharted territory at the moment, unsure what exactly can AI do, how much of an impact is it going to have. The only thing we know is that it's going to be big, but how big and how do we use it in our areas? And I think what we'll be launching soon is a very good take on how AI can definitely help the process excellence teams, but also just regular businesses without a process excellence team wanting to work with processes and improve in that area of their business, getting to standardized ways of working, and also in that sense become more efficient.
Exactly, and one more thing to add that we didn't mention so much is that it will also make it a lot easier to create local language versions for certain things. So, for instance, if you have a factory in I don't know, in Poland, maybe you want to have certain work instructions in Polish, and then you can ask AI to create suggestions in Polish of using something else as a starting point. So it has a lot of possibilities for productivity enhancement. There is a suggestion for showing competency requirements on swim lanes. That may be a great option. It is certainly the idea that we should be using these competencies as a layer on top of the processes, because they can be a qualifier for whether or not you will be able to participate in a certain process. Even starting cases. An example could be if we have a project management process and you have cases for small projects, for medium-sized, and for large projects. Well, then maybe a small project just needs a low competency level, whereas a large project needs a high competency level. And then we would be able to stop you from starting a project if you don't have the required competencies. The same thing goes with all kinds of very critical information, like we talked about last time. If you're in a utility and you're going to be working with high voltage equipment, well, then you need a high voltage certificate because it's a matter of life and death. Those type of things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean this is so interesting.